Welcome to the Next Level Human podcast. As a human, you have a job to do. In fact, you have 4 jobs: to earn and manage money, to attain and maintain health and fitness, to build and sustain personal relationships, to find meaning and make a difference. None of these jobs are taught in school, and that is what this podcast is designed to do. To educate us all on living our most fulfilled lives through the mastery of these 4 jobs. I'm your host, Dr. Jade Teta, and I believe we are here living this life for 3 reasons and 3 reasons only: to learn, to teach, and to love. In this podcast, I will be learning, teaching, and loving right along with you. I'm grateful to have your company. Here's to our next level. Okay, what's up, everybody? So welcome to the show today. I got one of my dearest friends who's just visiting me in LA and just beat my ass in a workout today, as she always does. Nat Newhart. What's going on, Nat? Oh,
not much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So good to see you. So we've been hanging out all day, me and Nat, and just kind of talking shop. And I was like, hey, let's turn on the podcast and get into some stuff. And so one of the things that happened today that I kind of wanted her and I to talk about is just kind of let you guys know. Nat is, she's an interesting, she's a very interesting, extraordinary human. She has been immersed in the CrossFit world for a long time. And, I want to brag on her. I know she's very humble, so she's probably going to get a little bit embarrassed. But she has been one of the most elite athletes in the world. She was in the CrossFit Games, 2013 was it? And has been immersed in this world. And if you train with her and see the kind of stuff she will do, sometimes I just like to go and search her out on YouTube and watch all her old clips from the CrossFit Games because she's such a badass in this. And we won't necessarily get into a whole lot of your story in that because people can find that. We can if you want to, but one of the things that I have found is being a bodybuilding guy, a guy that came from sort of bodybuilding and really just trained for football and then just kept doing it. Today we were in the gym, and today we were doing a workout called the Cali Bear, which is basically typically supposed to be 225 for men and 155 for women, and it's basically a clean and a press every 30 seconds for 20 minutes. So it's essentially a total of 40 sort of reps. And I kind of said to Nat, I said, so walk me through sort of how you do this, because I know she has a very sort of particular and very cool way of approaching workouts. And before the workout, she kind of walked me through my non-existent front rack position. And so I should put this video so you can see how perfectly her form is and how ridiculous I look. But one of the things she said is that when she goes into the workouts now, especially if she's going to do a hard workout, she will set 2 intentions. One intention in the workout is an emotional intention. And so she was coaching me today and said, hey, Jade, focus on an emotional intention. What do you want to choose? And I forget what I chose now. I think it's gratitude, because at first I chose joy. Generosity or something like that. Joy, that's right. And then you said, I'm going to focus on gratitude today. And I had a really great day yesterday. So I was like, I want to focus on that. And then she also said, now pick one thing in your movement to really focus on. So she taught me the hook grip today and was trying to help me sort of understand how to get my rack position a little bit more solid for the press. And so I focused on that. I'll say one more thing about this, and then I want you to walk us through why and how this is done. And one of the things I found is very interesting. It's very much like the first time you practiced meditation. I was telling her afterwards, I was like, that was so interesting, because I'd go into the lift. Because remember, you got 30 seconds to reset, then you go back into this lift. And I would kind of approach it, and the first few seconds I would be in it, and then I would immediately be out of it. And especially as the workout went on and it started getting harder, I kept having to remind myself, go back to gratitude, don't forget, sort of your technique. And I can see how very much like the meditative process, as I practice that, how that will sort of roll over. So I want to know from you, tell us, sort of how you see this. Why is it beneficial to us? And walk us through sort of your process and how I can get better and people like me can get better. Why would they even want to do this?
Yeah, so basically, I've pretty much spent like a good 10 years just grinding through workouts. Like I just thought it had to be this process of suffering, and that the more you suffered, that the better. And the thing about it is, like, what happened is I would do workouts with just wanting to like go hard or go fast, and I had this expectation that I always set on myself. And so often did I leave the gym with my head down or beating myself up, and it was just like, I was just always so hard on myself, and it wasn't an enjoyable process. I mean, only unless I won. If I won, or if I did well and if I PR'd, then I was happy, right? But the thing is, from the transition that I've been through, like I love the gym. Like I'm an addict, and I love it. I love what it does to my state of being, and I want to be able to go in the gym and have a good time no matter what, or like have it emphasize my happiness every single time. So, and I've been doing a lot of like mental work over the past year. And what I notice is that when you focus on your emotions rather than the result, the weight, the time, the score, then I can really choose how I want my workout to go. And what I've realized is when I align with a they call it a love-based state, where it's like peace, love, joy, those things that like we all really want to feel. When you just commit to doing that, like not only like you will perform in that way as well. Like your body, your mind, your spirit will all perform very well, and it's surprising. Like you're just going to, it's when you perform your best. Like that's when elite athletes perform their best, when they're in that flow state. But any person can get there by just shifting the energy within you, the vibration. And the point of this is that I never have a bad day at the gym. When I figured this out, I don't have to get scared. I don't panic. I'm cool. I'm calm. I'm loving every second of it. I'm super present. And it's really like gym meditation. Like it is my form of gym meditation. Like, yeah.
It's really interesting you talk about the flow state, right? Because I have never heard anyone really describe how to get in it in that way. I remember playing football in high school, and I had this couple games where I knew I was in it. I know what that feels like. Like I was a fullback, and they just kept giving me the ball. I rushed for something like close to 300 yards as a fullback. Anyone that knows football, that's almost impossible to do. And I look back now, and I'm like, that was flow. It was literally a state of sort of aware bliss is the only way I can think of it. I was so aware and so in tune and so just in the moment that I would just find the holes immediately. I would break tackles. And I never knew. I remember being like, that was amazing. What was that? And I never really knew how to get back to it. And also in CrossFit, I find myself, because I'm not a CrossFit dude, I'm a big rhino, and you kind of laugh at this with me, but my cardio is horrible. So like to me, I'm just sucking wind, and then I get panicked. Right. And so I'm in this panic state. And so I think this is going to be incredibly helpful for me, because you were just saying, look, when you get in that panic state, go back to that joy state or that gratitude state and focus on that. And I can see how I've never heard anyone describe like that's actually what can get you into the flow. Whereas I wish someone had taught me that, sort of back in the day.
Me too. Like, and it's different from like the flow state that I used to get in with athletics. It's this weird, fulfilling feeling where, like, if I'm focused on love, I feel love. I embody love, and like I love the pain. Like I truly love the burn. I love that my muscles can get to that burn, and I love that my mind can stay calm in the midst of panic, right? And so it's different, because it's not like I'm just shutting out everything. I'm just focused intensely on one emotion, and it's really weird. Like
how it breaks down. I want I want the tangible. So walk us through for me. And there's a couple things I want to talk to you on this podcast, but I just thought we would start there because it was such an interesting experience for me today. But so walk me through the tangible. So as I start to practice this, or if anyone wants to practice this, like today when I came away and you said, yeah, that's exactly right. I said, but okay, how do I do it? And you said, okay, look, when you approach the bar before your lift, sort of think like, I'm grateful I get to do this. I'm grateful I can even lift this weight. I'm grateful for my health stepping up to this bar. I'm grateful that I have the shoulder mobility to push this thing overhead. I'm grateful that I'm hanging out with Nat and being able to be in this state. I'm grateful for the fact that I can, breathe like a damn rhinoceros and, get enough oxygen, and I don't have to worry about it. I'm grateful that I can do these things with my body because, I don't know, 3 weeks ago when I had the flu and I thought I was going to have to check myself into the hospital, I certainly could not have done this workout. I may not be able to do it when I'm older, but walk us through any other tips you have. Like, I want to know, so as you go into this workout today, how did you start it? How did you do the intention? And then what is going on in your head as you approach this? And do you ever slip out of it at any time? And if you do, how do you get back into it?
Yeah. So I do have a process. So the first thing I do is when I'm warming up, usually about my warm up, I'll decide if it's going to be like a green or a yellow day, depending on how my body's moving, what my motivation is, what I've got going on that day. And
you and I talk a lot about green and yellow, so let them know. So green is sort of like, this is a day you're going to go hard and crush it. And yellow is sort of like a day where you're like, I'm not going to try to crush it. I'm just going to do my thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like the 3 Ps, perform, play, and peace out. So green days are your perform days. Like you're going to have heavier weights, have more intensity, maybe more volume. And then yellow days are my play days. Like it's really just playing. Like I'll just, maybe I'll do some bodybuilding stuff or just a workout, but I'm doing 180s onto a box or something like that,
Play for you is pain for me, by the way.
Not if you use this sort of structure, right? But what was the question? What did you say?
Yeah, so I want you to just now walk us through how you do this. So your process. So you were saying, where I stopped you was you were saying, I decide whether it's going to be a green day or a yellow day. So in other words, you're deciding in your head, one of the first decisions you make.
Right.
So your workout, right? So we were doing the Cali Bear today. You know what you're going to do. Then you're deciding, am I going to go heavy and hard and just all out and go for a PR or crush life? Or am I just going to kind of stay a little bit lighter and play? And today I think you went a little bit lighter than maybe you normally would, although it's heavy as hell.
No,
you didn't. Okay, so you went hard
was
today.
Green.
Okay, good, cool. So walk us through that. So that's the first decision you make. You're like, I'm going green. Now,
what intensity am I going to do?
Does that intensity ever change once you get into it? Like today, I was thinking maybe I'll go up to 225, and I stayed yellow today.
Usually, I'll know if I'm. Usually, I'll stay with yellow, but sometimes if I chose green and I realize that this is hurting and it's not, then I'm going to just be okay with pulling back. Because I work out first thing in the morning, and so. Depending on how hard I go, then that'll dictate how much food I eat, But so first I do that. I assess whether it's green, yellow, red, and then I'll set an intention. So it's, this is where I'm going to pick for sure, an emotional state. I want to choose, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel when I leave this gym? How do I want to feel when I'm doing this workout? And that it tends to be the same things that kind of pop up, right? Love is always there because love is sort of joy, and it's just very powerful. But sometimes I'll pick peace or gratitude or joy or power or strength.
You also said calm at one time too. I like that. You were like,
peace,
calm.
same
peace,
thing.
Calm.
Yeah. So I'll pick peace when obviously a yellow day, or when I just want to stay calm and cool and I just focus on that. So I set the intention for the emotional part, and then sometimes I'll pick a cue for the technical part, right? So maybe, okay, I'm going to really make sure I focus on my depth on my squats because I like to cut those short. Or today, for the power cleans, I made an intention, okay, I'm going to receive the bar as high as I can because I tend to get kind of lazy and receive the bar on my chest, and it works. It's just the thing is you can't focus on too many things, so it's 2 things max, an emotion and maybe a technical thing. But a lot of times I actually just focus on an emotion, like, so.
Okay, so then walk us through. So we're doing this workout. The workout's ticking away. We get 1 rep down, 30 seconds go. We get another rep down, 30 seconds go. How and so where are you saying and talking to yourself in this workout? Like when are there times where you're like, I'm wondering, because for me, when you told me this, I was literally talking to myself. I was like, I'm grateful I can move like this, man. You should be grateful that you can even breathe right now. Like, you're getting it handed to you. I'm grateful for any mobility I have in my shoulders. I'm definitely grateful that I can muscle this thing up if I need to. Like, I'm grateful I'm under control. Are you talking to yourself through that?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me how that's working and how it works. Because to me, an emotional state is tough, right? You'd be like, how do you talk yourself into an emotional state?
Well, honestly, what I often do is I'll just repeat the word over and over and over. So, and that'll kind of get me into it, right? And so when I repeated the word 30, 50, 100 times, my body will naturally start to embody that like, I'm just going to start to find reasons, So, but today what I did, this workout was different because it was like a one rep every 30 seconds. So, but before I lifted the bar, I reminded myself, okay, I'm trying to receive it high. And I said to myself, I'm grateful for, having this gym. I'm grateful to work out with you. I'm grateful for my strong, powerful legs, and it just connects, like the mind, the body, when it's aligned like that, it's just, you can do some pretty cool stuff. Because, like, I haven't cleaned that weight, like, in a long time, let alone without a belt.
Yeah.
And
so I'm just going to tell them what you were using. So I ended up going a little lighter today, 185. And what were you using, 155 or 165?
And I don't practice any of that stuff anymore, like. So.
And it's funny, if any of you follow Nat on, I was just talking to a friend of mine who follows you on Instagram, and she's like, she's really big, right? I'm like, she's teeny tiny,
really?
Right? Because I think they don't get a sense of how power packed you are. You're what, 5 what? What the hell tall?
Maybe.
Yeah.
5 feet.
5 feet, right?
Yeah.
But also like just all muscle. And so it's funny if you don't see yourself in context. Like, I think the same person saw a picture of you and I where we took a picture, and like, I'm not the tallest guy. I'm 5'10". I'm average for a guy. And she was like, oh my gosh, she's like so tiny. I was like, yeah, she is, but she's also incredibly muscular, which can make you look big in pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting. That's one thing that I'm going to start doing a little bit, because I tend to get I oftentimes say, never do someone else's workout, right? Because you're going to get your ass beat. And every time Nat and I are together, she ends up doing my workout. She's also been CrossFitting for a very long time, and I'm just into it. So I choose the workouts, and I'm usually the one getting my ass beat in them because I'm trying to keep up with her. But that's the first thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about, is just sort of this approach you take to the gym, just because I think it is really interesting, and I thought I could benefit from it. And I just want the listeners to try to, kind of get a sense of this, because I don't think we normally think this way at all. Normally it's like, let me just get through this. I'm terrified. Or I'm like, I'm in so much pain and this sucks. Or, like, let me beat this person. Let me beat this person. And instead you're in there being, I'm grateful. This is amazing. I can't believe I get to do this. Oh my God, this is wonderful. Jade's here. We're training. We're having fun, like that kind of thing. So let me ask you the next thing, though. And this is sort of where I think people can really sort of benefit from your expertise. One of the things that you and I share is we share this sort of understanding, sort of the science behind and the manipulation of keeping the metabolism healthy and functional, and even helping the metabolism recover when it has been stress has been overdone. Any kind of stress, really, but especially I know for you, a lot of it has been training stress, because you kind of got yourself into this sort of, quote, it's a bad word in our field now, but quote, I kind of like it, but quote, metabolic damage. And obviously your metabolism doesn't break. It's just doing what it does. It essentially adapts, but it can adapt to the point where it is really struggling, and you can have symptoms of illness. And so what I want you to do is walk us through a little bit of that story, because I think when people see the elite nature of you, and then they can understand, oh my God, like, look what happened to her. This can really happen to individuals. And then you and I get into helping them understand nutritional training and sort of lifestyle strategies and even supplements maybe if you want to go there to deal with this. But I really like for people to kind of hear what happened to you, because I would think that most people think that doesn't happen, and it absolutely happened to you. So walk us through what was going on, your training style and everything you were doing, and how you essentially woke up one day with the inability to lose weight, puffy, feeling, awful, not being able to function anymore, and going from this sort of elite athlete state to this kind of beat down, sort of tired, fatigued, sick individual.
Yeah. So it started off, I spent probably the past 10 years training about 5-6 hours a day, for the CrossFit Games.
Which is fucking insane when you think about that. Like listen,
Yeah.
5 to 6 hours a day, and that's legit.
Probably
So,
5 to 6 days a week.
so it was your job, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it felt like a job, And so I did that for, probably, 8-9 years. And then I did a bodybuilding competition. And I used the same approach that I was doing with CrossFit, and I brought it to bodybuilding. I was like, I'm just going to, I'm going to win. I'm the hardest worker in the room. And so I trained 5-6 hours a day on eating very low calories. And the first time it worked like really well. I got super shredded. And then I signed up for another show, and it didn't work so well. And I actually ended up not doing that second show. And so that's when I transitioned back into CrossFit to compete. And I got back in, so this whole time I was training a lot. But this time, when I actually was starting to compete in CrossFit, it was during the Open. I can't remember what year it was. But within 2 months, I remember that I gained 20 pounds in 2 months. And because I had a bathing suit that I bought in January. And in March, I went to put it on. It was in the middle of the season. And I couldn't fit a single leg in this brand new bathing suit that I had.
I remember you told me this story. I'm like, a leg? And you were like, no, Jade,
Yeah.
seriously, I bought this bathing suit and I couldn't fit one leg in it, and it fit me. And I don't know why it makes me laugh so much, because I'm like, you sure it didn't shrink or something?
No, I
in the
hadn't
dryer?
worn it. I hadn't worn it. And that's what I said. I was like, this looks like a kid's bathing suit. Because I wasn't weighing myself. Like, when you're an athlete, you perform, right? And I thought, like, I was actually... I thought something was up because my gymnastics were getting so much harder, my muscle ups, all that stuff. And I asked my coach, I'm like, Coach, I think I'm gaining weight. Like, I feel fat. And he's like, oh, you're just a girl. Like, it's, you're fine.
Get over it.
Exactly.
You're absolutely fine.
I'm like, okay.
Train harder.
Yeah. You listen to him, And, but this was like a very real, this was when I realized, holy crap, like, something's going on here, because I actually thought it was my girlfriend's bathing suit. Turned out it was mine. And that's when I realized that, when I weighed myself and I gained 20 pounds, and I immediately went to the like CVS or something and bought a glucose glucometer.
Yeah.
And it was reading high. It was in like the 1-teens,
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized I didn't know actually what had happened, because I wasn't really, educated in that right then. I was just educated on your typical calories in, calories out kind of thing, right? I didn't understand that stress could make you fat. Had no idea. And even my coach, my nutrition coach I was working with, he didn't even think that. He couldn't tell me.
Well, even today, I would say, even today, there are people listening to this, popular people in our field, actually, and doctors and physicians who would say that can't happen, yet clinically we see it. And so let's stop. Let me just go back and just reframe for everybody what's happening. So here she is going through CrossFit, training for CrossFit, eating and training. She decides she's going to do a bodybuilding contest. Those of you who don't know, this is essentially, for the bodybuilding in general, is pretty, if you're just doing it recreationally, you're eating enough and training enough. You just kind of eat more, exercise more. But when you get on stage, you're doing an extreme version of eat less, exercise more.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about your story, having done bodybuilding before, the average bodybuilder getting ready for a show trains maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe if they're crazy. But 2 hours is a long time to stay in the gym. So you're still doing 5-6 hours in the gym, eating like a bodybuilder, which these very low carbohydrate diets, calories falling, carbs falling up till, and you get through the first one and look freaking amazing. Of course, this makes your mind go, oh, wow, that's great. The second one, this is when your metabolism starts, and those of you who listen to my podcast know, this is where the metabolic compensation starts kicking in, the metabolic resistance starts kicking in. She starts not feeling well. And then she goes back into CrossFit after this very depleted bodybuilding, sort of foray, starts doing all the CrossFit training again, still all this training, and all of a sudden the metabolism goes, I'm not having it. And you end up putting on an excessive amount of weight in a short period of time. I won't go too far into this, but I had a similar experience in my life where I was bartending, personal training, and going to medical school for about a 6 to 9 month period. And that's where my thyroid essentially blew up, and I gained 30 pounds over that time. My metabolism hasn't really been the same since, but you and I share that experience, and it was a highly stressful state for both of us. So where did you go from there then? So now here you are, 20 pounds heavier, and you have this funny picture that you show that you see sometimes where it's like you woke up in the morning and your face just looks like, Elephant Man, and it's like, you're like, what the hell has happened to Nat, right? So then what? Like, how did you deal with this? Because obviously that's not a fun physical state to be in. You're actually pre-diabetic, even though you're training like crazy and eating good. And psychologically, you're probably looking at yourself being like, what the hell happened to my physique?
Yeah. Well, I realized very quickly that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing because I didn't want to, I want to compete and all, but the last thing I want to do is get fat from exercising, like.
Which, say that again, right? That's what's so funny. In a sense, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny because it's like I was using exercise as a means to, as a health, something healthy, and that very thing, when done to the extreme, made me fat,
And sorry to interrupt you, I'm talking a lot, but I do want to just say this for the listeners. Here's the one thing that I think Nat would agree with, and I just want to caution everyone. This does not happen to the vast majority of people. It does not happen to most people. However, the fact is it does happen to a minority of individuals, and you're kind of talking to two that it has happened to. And you're also talking to two people who see this. And so I don't want people going around being like, I broke my metabolism. What you have to understand is that it's more that you stress to such an excessive degree that your body has started to manifest illness. It's as simple as that. The body is just doing what it's designed to do. And so it's not that you're broken forever.
Right.
Although we do have some studies, like the Biggest Loser study, saying there are some metabolic changes that can last at least up to 6 years when people do this excessive dieting. But I don't know that we want to call it necessarily metabolic damage in the sense that, it's really something broken you can't fix. And obviously you have kind of made it back. So now I want you to walk us through, and then you and I together can go through, people who are dealing with this, how to potentially fix it.
Yeah. So nobody at first could help me until I found you. So I'm not sure how I found you. It was through the podcast, and I heard your story, and I was like, "That's what happened to me."
See, I never heard you tell me this before.
Yeah,
this interesting. Okay.
And then I think that's when I signed up for like one of your courses, and I went, and then you like helped me kind of figure out what had happened.
Yeah.
And but before that, I realized that I had to lay off the training, and what I was doing was not working. And so I had to pull out of the competition. That was extremely hard, and just pulling out of the gym was hard. I actually ended up, my boyfriend and I, we went camping for 2 weeks. We took the dirt bikes out because I couldn't not go to the gym. Like, it would drive me insane.
So he's like, babe, I'm just going to distract you to get you somewhere else.
Yeah. So we went somewhere without Wi-Fi, like without service, and we just camped. And that was perfect. But then when we came back, I started to get back in the gym again, and the whole process started back over. Until I met you, and you helped me figure out how to like manage my intensity, and do it in a way that was going to satisfy my hunger for the gym, but not beat myself up and lead me to the same thing. So that's basically, and then what happened is, when I was all that free time that I wasn't spending in the gym, I started to take it really seriously to recover more and, like walk. And I naturally just started to do things like out in nature again, kind of things that I've actually, really enjoyed, but the gym was my life, that I never had time to do that. And things just my body started to fall back in place. Everything like just started to shift right back. So once I started to really take care of myself and manage my intensity.
One thing actually is it's really interesting just to think about this, and I want to see your thought on this, but one of the things that you and I both teach, right, is we teach this idea of rest and recovery activities, almost treating them as workouts and scheduling them in.
Yeah.
So things like nature walks out in green settings, these are relaxing walks, things like physical affection, massage, foam rolling, mobility work, contrast hydrotherapy, creative pursuits. But one of the things I just recognized now when you were talking to me is one of the things you did, because I remember you told me this, is all this extra time that you had. This is one of the things that I love about you. You're sort of a next level human in this regard. You started coaching people way more, teaching people way more. So you went from sort of this self-focused, driven, all about, sort of me in the gym and winning and performing and training. And one of the things that you did was begin to help others. And it just dawned on me that, think about that, right? You and I need to start including that in the list of rest and recovery activities, because there's nothing more stress reducing, I think, than helping another human and giving of ourselves and our purpose. So I'm going to start remembering to include that. Helping others is another thing that, we as humans will reduce our stress. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. I'm going to use that too.
But, so here's the interesting thing. That then you started sort of being that, okay, if I'm going to put out this amount of activity, I need to start equally, looking at rest and recovery and repair and regeneration. And so you started to, really put together a, lifestyle that was still gym-based, but also rest and recovery-based. Walk us through so people can kind of understand. I know it's different for everybody, but what were some of those activities, and how did they start to manifest? Like, did you go from, 5-6 hours in the gym and then you were out walking 5 to 6 hours? Or what actually was your time like now all of a sudden as you started to pull back? I mean, you still were training every day, right? So did you go, I want to just know what the numbers were. Were you still daily in the gym and that was 1 hour now instead of 6? And what else were you doing?
So it was slow. Yeah. It was like a clenched fist, and you were just barely letting go. And then you realize that, I'm not fat, like by not working out so much. And I feel good. And then so it's just loosen up the grip a little bit more. And then I have a normal life now,
Tell me, okay, that's interesting. So tell me about that, because I get that all the time from clients, and I know you do too, when we tell them stop exercising so much, and it's a control point for them, and they think they're going to get fat. And some people do bump up just slightly for a second, and then all of a sudden they find, oh my gosh, I'm doing way less. I mean, how many emails and texts have you gotten like that from clients where they're like, you won't believe it? And you're like, yeah, I do believe it. So tell us about that sort of part, that struggle where you were like, oh my God, I'm going to get fatter now.
Yeah, I was scared, but I didn't have a choice, and so it's actually really great that I was stuck in where I was. I didn't have another direction to go. And that's when I really started to see that, rest days were an opportunity to burn fat. As long as I was able to do my rest and recovery activities and keep my calories low, I woke up leaner, the next day. And when that's cool because, we all want to look good, feel good. And not be obsessive with food. So it sort of just like reset everything, and it gave you a reason to go out in nature and just I don't know, just it was just a really cool outlet. But yeah, you were saying so how did I get there? We started off, I was training 7 days a week. I would just start with, had one rest day. And then it was okay, well, instead of all of the days that I was training, instead of them all being green, I made 3 of them yellow and 2 of them green, or maybe it was actually 3 green or 4 green. So I just cut it down, the intensity, which was a relief because I was exhausting myself in the gym. So knowing that I gave myself permission to not kill myself in the gym, it was nice. And my body started to like that too. And so that's just kind of what happened is I just started to back off the intensity. And then, my, 5 hours a day became 4 hours, became 3 hours. And so now I'm down to an hour, and it's really
and
cool.
That's insane for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go backwards for everyone, and I apologize because I like to kind of just do this. So it sounds like stage 1 for you was just awareness. It's like I'm stuck. I'm going to have to do something, and it's uncomfortable. Stage 2 for you was this idea of being introduced to the concept of, okay, I am going to start chunking my days into intense days, green days, days where I'm just sort of like in that middle zone. I'm in the gym, but I'm not trying to kill myself, yellow days. And then I'm going to look at red days. And red days, for me, and I'd be interested in your red days, but for me, red days are where I do nothing but rest and recovery activities. And they also include very low calories. Maybe I'm fasting that day or something like that. But that seems like that was stage 1 and 2. Stage 1, awareness. Stage 2, managing the intensity in your workouts by sort of understanding this green and yellow and red thing. And you've actually expanded and perfected this to a degree that I haven't even. It's like you've kind of taken it to the next level, and I'd love to hear you talk about that. But then it sounds like there is a stage 3 here, and the stage 3 I want you to talk about, which is this terminology and vocabulary that you and I often use, and you refer to it differently than I do sometimes. But we talk about this idea of cycling EL, EL, and EM, EM inside of these training days. So there's certain days you're eating, like, a damn horse. And other days you're not eating like that. And this was also, I think, an awareness thing that you started to do. So walk us through, like, if someone's understanding this, first you have to take that leap, which you did. Second, you really have to start understanding managing training stress with rest and recovery activities and these three sort of degrees of intensity. And then you have to start, sort of understanding how to now partition nutrition inside of this. And how did you manage that? So what did you start doing differently, if anything, with nutrition?
So back then I was macro, like I was all about the macros. I tracked everything. And so I held on to that, and I had very specific, like I just had high carb days on my green days, moderately carb on my yellow, and very low, as low as I can on my red days, while staying full and balanced and everything. But then I took it the next step further, which was, then I started to like maybe not track one meal or not track one day. And that was really easy to do on red days, and that was like me dipping my toe in the water a little bit, like releasing my grip off of the obsession of tracking food. So
maybe a little more intuitive now.
Exactly,
on red days.
Which is perfect on a red day. And then I started to do the same thing with the yellow. I was like, okay, well, let's try just not tracking one meal on yellow days or not a full yellow. And so now I just, I don't track at all. But I have a really good awareness, and so I know, on my green days, that's the days where I'm going to have more rice, maybe more pasta, maybe more fruit, stuff like that. And I don't even track like how many meals anymore, but I will give my clients a structure because they do need structure,
Yeah, I oftentimes say this, and maybe you want to say something about this, but I oftentimes say it's very easy for someone like you to become an intuitive eater. Partly, well, not easy because you still have to release the psychological grip, but you have a lot of reps in the kitchen and on the weighing scale and in the calculator and on MyFitnessPal, right? Like you know pretty much like what a 8-ounce chicken breast is like. That's 300 calories and about 30 grams of protein, and like that you just start to know that. And so I oftentimes say intuitive eating, which I think should be the goal for most people, unless you are like a performer and an athlete. You're going to maybe have to be a little bit more structured, but I think most people need to get there. However, I'm not so sure they can get there without a period of time where they are tracking and getting some reps. It's kind of like a pilot who intuits something wrong with the plane. He's not going to be able to know there's something wrong with the plane unless he's got a lot of reps in the air and he's sort of sitting. It's like that reminds me of that dude Sully who landed the plane in the Hudson River in New York City, where he takes off and they're telling him you can make it back to the runway. He's like, he feels intuitively something's wrong with that plane. But the reason that he can do that is because as a pilot, he's taken off thousands of times. He knows what that plane can do. And I think same with us. So we can be a little more intuitive because we've actually had a lot of the reps.
Exactly.
And so I just want to see if you have any thought on that or tidbits for people who are trying to make that same, because you've moved to a very intuitive state with training, a very intuitive state mentally and emotionally, and now in a very intuitive state nutrition. And you, of all people, you were a self-admitted fitness addict and obsessive compulsive around nutrition. And now you're the opposite pretty much.
Yeah. And I think the number one thing is just like really like just, I think practicing awareness, and you can do a lot of that in the gym or on your red days or, like with the emotional intention or just literally just like sitting still, sitting quiet, like going on walks, without listening to anything, just starting to kind of listen to yourself. And the same, like when you're eating, like what are you craving? What are you hungry for? And because I mean people are always like wondering, well, how many carbs should I have or what should I have? And it's like, well, what are you craving? Because like you could eat a whole meal and maybe you're, because you didn't have like some type of starch in that meal, you're going to continue eating until you have like a cookie or something like that. Whereas if you just would have had the cookie in the first place, then you could have probably had a really small salad and you would have been good.
Yeah. And this is where a good coach comes in. I do think people who don't have this, they do need a coach for a little while. It's kind of like training wheels. It's part of the why people can't necessarily figure this out. And one of the things that's interesting about Nat that you did today is like, I was like, it's kind of like meditation. And you were like, yes, this is where I meditate. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I don't necessarily see you cross-legged, index fingers and thumbs oming. You don't meditate like that, but your mindfulness has been honed in very sort of frenetic, loud places like the gym or the kitchen or life's going on around you because you're someone I know stays very busy, yet you've honed this mindful state. And it's almost like you've just decided that I train mindfulness in when it's most busy, and it's served you. It's a really interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think it's interesting too. I do meditate like probably 3 times a week, like sitting still and doing that because I think that's important too. Yeah. By not moving and not having to do something, and I think that helps. But yeah, the gym is definitely like sometimes I don't listen to anything. Sometimes I'll listen to meditation stuff, like meditative music and chants.
That today,
yeah, and it's just I just zone in. It's like literally a time warp.
Yeah, I asked her today, and I said, "Well, so what do you listen to?" She goes, "Well, sometimes I listen to Guru, somebody. Sometimes I listen to you on your podcast and Tony Robbins, and other times I listen to punk rock." And I was like, "That is hilarious. I've never listened to a podcast in a workout."
Very rarely do I listen to music now. Yeah. It's always something to feed my mind. I'm always feeding my mind or building my mindset.
Yeah, I'm always listening to angry hip hop or Tool or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go, what I want us to do is let's give them sort of some take homes in terms of let's say that this is someone who really wants to try this on their own. They found that they're in some degree of metabolic compensation or metabolic resistance or metabolic damage. And maybe you even want to walk them through how to know. We can do that together. Like, how do you know and what are the stages of this that you and I talk about? And then the beginning sort of steps of how this would be. Like, how do you know when you're in metabolic compensation or, resistance or damage? And how do you then get out of each of those?
Mm-hmm. Well, metabolic compensation, I feel like everybody really gets into that really quickly, So that's just your standard hunger, energy, cravings, out of balance, your typical feels when you're doing a diet.
Yeah.
Right.
Which kicks in about how long for you? Like for me, it's about 7 days.
Dude.
When does it kick in for you? 4
Mine's
days?
Quick.
It's quick.
It's quick. Yeah. So I get in and I get out.
Yeah. I see compensation. When I start a program, first few days sucks, but you're just getting into it. Then I get in a little groove for like 4 days. Mm-hmm. And then up there it comes. Hunger, cravings. Yeah. I'm wanting a burger, pizza. Okay. So that happens to everyone. And for you, it happens about 4 days. Mm-hmm. For me, it happens in about 7 days. Everyone hits it. How do you deal with that? Like, what do you typically recommend at that stage for someone who's sort of in compensation? They're starting to see the hunger and energy and cravings get out of check. Yeah. Nat and I call that heck out of check. What do you recommend they do at that point?
Go to a different phase. Mm-hmm. So usually my go-to is a red day. Mm-hmm. So ELEL, where I reset because that's where I can. So I just don't go into the gym. I go walk. I do all my recovery workouts, and I try to reset my hunger, and just eat as little as I can. And because I'm not training, I should naturally eat less. Like it's just going to be easier. And that'll usually, just even one day of that will kind of reset me. Yeah. And then maybe I'll go into a yellow day where I eat some, exercise some. But really, it's just a matter of switching switch in phases.
So any phase will work, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, sometimes I keep wanting to train, so
Yeah.
I just bump up my calories a little bit,
Yeah.
and that takes care of it, which bumps up my intensity. And it's kind of counterintuitive for a lot of people because they go, why would you eat less? And if you listen to what Nat said, she's saying, I exercise less and I eat less. And what a lot of people don't realize is that exercise is a hunger promoter. So by her taking the day off, her exercise is less suppressed. And also, by the way, food, because of some of its potent flavors, can stimulate you wanting to eat more food. And so what she's essentially doing is saying, I'm exercising less, so I'm not as hungry, and I reduce my food intake and my highly palatable food intake especially, and all of a sudden I don't need to eat as much, and I'm back to balance.
And that's on a good day, right? And sometimes it doesn't happen like that.
Yep.
So, sometimes when those cravings are out of whack, I've had my cravings out of whack, one time where it was out for like 3 weeks because I was moving too, and that was a stress on me.
Yeah.
And so that's another good time where it's like, okay, well, if red days aren't working, we'll go green.
Yeah.
Because if we can't control the cravings, well, then let's at least utilize the calories that you are eating to build muscle.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting, right? So it's like, you listen to what Nat's saying. She's like, I can go EL, which is eat less, exercise less, red day, little food. I can just keep training like I'm training, add some food in. I can do sort of this eat some, exercise some sort of yellow day. And a lot of people have done this, which can backfire, which is go into EL, which is eat more, exercise less, a red day where you kind of have a cheat meal, and that can work for some people, but that's where I tend to see it go slippery slope, because that cheat meal could turn into a cheat month. But it sounds like what you're telling us is when you hit metabolic compensation, you need to change up the relationship between training and nutrition and try to match them. If you're going to take a day off eating or eat less. If you're going to train harder that day, eat a little bit more. Match those two up, because the way Nat and I like to talk about it is the gap between calories oftentimes is the stress that's triggering the hunger and cravings. Whether it's you're being the couch potato or you're being the dieter, both of those can relate to stress and cause hunger and cravings. So that's compensation. Now let's get into the next stage, which would be metabolic resistance. Walk us through what happens there. That's when, now you've been kind of willpowering it and you've hit a plateau. So you're like, I'm still eating less, exercising more, I'm trying to push it, and now your body, the hunger and cravings are more, and your body's now in a plateau and will not move. How do we jiggle ourselves off of this metabolic resistance state?
Yeah, so usually some of the symptoms with this, it's just going to be kind of like the next level, where you're going to probably start to see like your energies really up and down, or low motivation. Sleep is starting to going to be disturbed. And, for women, the menses cycle is going to start either coming early or irregular, heavy or light or something like that. And so with that, I usually, if the symptoms are worse, then we'll go more towards a red day. Because that's the thing, is I work with a lot of people that love to work out. Yeah. And so a lot of times going into EM isn't going to help them. What they need to do is just rest and recover. Yeah. And so that's usually, I'll make, we'll usually just go like a light, or maybe like a red yellow day, like a reddish yellow, if they need to get in the gym, because it's important that we keep them happy. I don't want them depressed because they can't go into the gym. Yeah. So. And
I typically, I think my approach there is I start to go back and forth, cycling back and forth. How are you on time?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, cool. I kind of go cycle back and forth on time. So I'll go EL maybe for a week, EM for a week, EL for a week, EM for a week. So it's sort of this back and forth for me to try to jiggle them off. But sometimes you're right, that can be tough, especially when you work with a clientele that's a little bit more exercise fanatical. So let's get into this last stage. And by the way, if you listen very closely to what Nat was saying about the first part, compensation, is really about hunger cravings, right? And then the second part, resistance, is really about, notice how she said, okay, now you still got the hunger cravings, but now you're seeing sleep disruption, fragmentation of sleep. You start seeing mood changes. You're not feeling quite as vital, and your energy starts to become a little bit unpredictable and unstable. So you see the difference. So I oftentimes talk about HEC, hunger, energy, and cravings, HEC, and then Metabolic resistance is a little bit more about schmeck, sleep, hunger, mood, energy, cravings start to go out of check. And when Nat and I use these kind of terms, that we also, schmeck and heck are really just an indication of biofeedback, all biofeedback. So menses would fall into that. Libido would fall into that. Erections would fall into that. And the reason I bring up libido, menses, and erection is because we humans are built for reproduction. And if we're under too much stress, our body doesn't want to reproduce, which is kind of what begins to happen as we go from resistance into, quote, metabolic damage, or probably a better thing is metabolic damage, metabolic dysfunction, or even metabolic disease. This is where you start getting, now you might have actual hypothyroid. Now you may actually lose your menses. Maybe men are not being able to maintain or sustain or gain or maintain and sustain erections. Maybe women start to lose their libido. You start to see where that whey protein shake that you used to tolerate just fine starts to cause a lot of gas and bloating. So now all of a sudden it's not just sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. It's libidos, menses, erection, digestion, and even migraines and other things. And this is where people might show up and be like, I need Nat, or I need Jade, or I need my physician to help me out with this. Now, what's your approach here once people hit this state, which you hit this in a major way when you and I first met?
Yeah, so usually when they come to me with that, when they're experiencing all those symptoms, and typically like the digestion is always like, that's always a key thing, you know, like they're bloated all the time, they're gassy, and maybe they have like a waterlogged look. And so that's usually like some classic signs. But I'll take them through basically a metabolic kind of rehab. You know, I'll go pretty intense for the first week, where we get like maybe 2 days in the gym, maybe 3 days that are really light days. And we focus on just a lot of recovery and low intake of food. So I'll take them, it's basically kind of like a short gut protocol for 5 to 7 days. And we'll see, like, depending on how much change happens within that week, if there's a large drop in weight, then we realize that there was a lot of stress on the system. And so that'll indicate to me, okay, like how extreme is this? Do we need to go into a full gut protocol, or can we start to, or maybe they don't lose that much weight and so they just needed a break for like a week. So, and the tricky thing for me is, since I work with people who love the gym, it's just, okay, we just got to keep them in there enough to keep them happy, but just make sure that they don't go super hard.
And notice what's really interesting for me, and I know you run into this too, people, the idea that you're cutting down food, and a lot of people go, why would you do that? When they're needing nutrition, they're training too much. And part of the reason that we do that is because their system can't handle it. The gas and bloating and all the digestive stuff that comes up at this point is telling you give them more food, they can't do it. Their whole system needs a break.
Right.
And by the way, this is where I start to, lean very heavily on adaptogens and stuff like that, which I'm going to have my brother, Dr. Jade Teta, who's more of an expert in that area than me, come on and talk to you all about adaptogens. But that's where Nat and I start working with adaptogens. So you can see, as we had this conversation with Nat, there's sort of like this very interesting 3-part process to this: managing training stress and understanding how to address that, when to go hard, when not to; managing sort of the lifestyle emotional states and how you manage that kind of stuff in the gym, and mindfulness and the awareness around this; and then this idea of managing macronutrients and sort of balancing that with exercise, where we start to have this conversation of vocabulary around eating less and exercising less, and eating more and exercising more, and eating some and exercising some, and understanding this natural progression that people can go through. And so this is essentially where I don't do a whole lot of this work anymore. So normally I'm sending them to Nat when people are just like, hey, are you still seeing clients? I'm like, you need to see Nat. This is what, she does. So tell people how to get in touch with you and how they can work with you if this is something that is going on with them. Where can they find you? How do you work your consults and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me, I'm most active on Instagram. So my handle is natalie.newhart. And there, if you want a free resource, I actually have a kind of a downloadable guide for women specifically, and it'll tell them how to tailor their diet and exercise with their menstrual cycle to get the most benefits. And not only that, but women who love the gym and don't want to get themselves into this situation where it's constant burnout, it cycles their diet between green, yellow, red, and then I also have a black week.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You have a free thing that teaches them this whole thing we just talked about.
Yeah.
You definitely got to go hook up that thing.
Yeah, so that's the link in my bio. You can get that for free.
And by the way, just to let them know how to spell your last name, like Natalie. How do you spell Newhart?
Newhart is Newhart.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have. I'm on the Instagram daily. You can always reach out to me there. I interact with everybody. And the other thing is, if you wanted to schedule a 30-minute breakthrough call, I'll spend 30 minutes reviewing kind of where you're at, what you're struggling with, what your goals are, and really pinpoint where your weaknesses lie. And I'll run them through a system that I have to really see, what they need to be working on to start seeing results. And that's available to everybody. And you can go to it's talktonat.com, or you can just reach out to me through Instagram and set that up.
Cool. I love you, buddy. Thanks for coming to visit me
Thank
in
you.
LA.
Yeah.
And I'll see you soon. Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode.